And that leads us on nicely to the next stage, which is how to organize your files and how to describe them, and anything else that you need to send along with the files. So I'll let you deal with this first bit, because getting a pack of 64 channels of files is not something that I deal with, luckily.
If someone has been working on their music either at home or at another studio, been tracking somewhere else, and they want us to come and mix it or record more stuff over it, the things that we need are, as we said earlier, consolidated audio, so it all starts in the right place and we're not having to manually line things up. But beyond that, we want names of things to make sense. So we are going to, at some point, kind of listen through each individual bit of audio. But I don't really want to throw everything in and just have track 1, track 2, track 3. I want to be able to quickly work and group drums together, group bass things together, work out where the synths are and things like that, so that I can build up an image of what this track looks like. So for that, I need to have sort of fairly standard naming conventions. So it's well worth spending the few minutes that it's going to take you to sit through and name tracks properly. So, kick is pretty self-explanatory, snare top is pretty self-explanatory, or abbreviations of those I can usually work out. But it's definitely worth you doing that on your time rather than paying me an extra hour to sit and work through things that are not named. Naming conventions are definitely a decent one. If you want to provide alternative takes of certain things, you're not sure which is, you want to maybe provide a few other vocal takes or things like that, by all means, just label them take 2, take 3, etc. We can, we can work with those. Naming is quite a big one for us.
Stereo as well. When you're rebuilding stereo files, that's a big one. And there's a couple of different ways that I've seen this done. If it's a live, like rock recording, quite a good thing that I've seen people do is, instead of describing the two sides of an overhead, for example, as left and right, also include which side the drums kit was set up. So,
yes, right.
Often it's like HH for hi-hat side, and all like R for ride side, because generally, unless you're left-handed and you play left-handed, those will have an actual convention to them. And when you're adding things like room mics and stuff in later on, or you're trying to pan stuff to the right side, then not to the right side, the correct side. Got to be really careful with this stuff. Then it's you can rebuild it essentially very, very quickly.
And notes, notes will never hurt. I mean, we don't necessarily, if you don't want to make these really long file names or whatever, just give us a text file along with the session that includes information like that. If you're bringing stuff into mix and you're going to export the audio for us without effects, but you kind of like what you did with the effects, screenshots of those effects plugins are great. BPM is also a useful one for us mixing, because often we'll want to sync our session up to the BPM that you recorded it at, if you recorded it to a set click or something like that, so that all our delays will be in time and things like that. And any sort of notes that you've got about the way it was recorded or anything that we should be aware of, just basically assume that we don't know anything about this. So, you know what you did to record it, by all means tell us.
And also, any language that you use, be consistent. So if you are describing things, don't call it, like that second part that Bob did. You've got to bear in mind that you're giving it to somebody completely fresh. So any descriptive terms that you've been using in your creative process or in your previous recording sessions won't make any sense. So when you do go through and name all the files properly, and then you then describe notes on them, you need to actually refer to that specific one, or if it's from another take, don't just put like that guitar from the other take. Call the file take 3, and then describe it as take 3. So when you're dropping audio back in, or someone says, "Oh, actually, we've got this other version. Let's try dropping this in the session." The amount of times that is not correct is probably more than the times that it is correct, unless people stick to consistent naming conventions.
And again, it's all about saving you money. In terms of if we get information that isn't very clear and we or if it feels clear but actually it's not what you were referring to, we're going to do a whole mix like that, bounce it out for approval. You're going to listen to it and say that's not what I wanted, then we've got to come back in another day, do it. It's adding time to things, and that's, spending more time at your end when you're not directly paying for it is probably preferable to you than paying for us to have to come back in and do things twice.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that often comes up later in the process, and it's
Yeah.
a total buzzkill. A classic one is you've got stereo guitars, you've got stereo drums, you've written and produced and recorded it one way round,
Yeah.
and the guitar solo comes and you realise it's over the hi-hat instead of over the ride.
Yeah.
It's things like that, or like backing vocals is another one where you've got them panned the wrong way the whole time, and then you suddenly have to start second guessing your reverbs and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, get that right from the start. So as far as naming things for mastering, this can get very, very complicated, because when it comes to the mastering stage, people haven't necessarily got everything completely finalized. So track order is a really big one. And sometimes people don't know how they want things to run into each other. You might get an email that says, we think the tracks are going in this order. There's a bit of noise between them. Can you try something, like be creative? So in that case, tracks might want to be stuck together. Or, for example, tracks might be 2-3 separate tracks, but they might want to be joined for the mastering. You might want one mastering setting over all of the tracks.
Right, yeah.
And then you want them recut up for the CD or whatever. So you need to be really clear with any sort of sequencing ideas or anything you want to try at an early stage. If you have got a set running order, please put the number on there, because it means that when I drop them into a DAW, it will numerically order them. If you haven't got a set running order, then just give me the final song names. If you haven't got the final song names, which also happens quite a lot, when you're communicating, make sure you communicate them as what I know them as. It's a little bit like talking about the guitar takes and stuff. I've had a lot of things before where I've sort of got to the very last stage, done the proof, done any EQ changes, and then they're like, right, here's the metadata for the CD, and then 4 tracks just don't exist at my end. And it's usually because there's been an argument on Facebook chat somewhere, they've changed the name, and then they haven't told me, because they're probably all falling out and being passive aggressive to each other, from my experience of being in bands. But it's just that thing of like, right, I've booked in the time, I've come in the morning to do it, and 4 of the tracks don't exist, and I'm trying to then work out which ones they are. And there's been times where I've listened to the lyrics and thought I've done it right. And it's like, oh no, the lyrics are the same in those 2 tracks. Or it's just like a theme or something. So
we can't second guess.
No.
What,
And at every point we do second guess, it's likely to be wrong. And that's just, again, that's that expectation management thing. You're just going to be disappointed. And we want you to get your stuff back and be like completely buzzing about it. And be like, right, we're going to, you might like put some time aside to like everyone comes around someone's house, listen to it. And if it's wrong, then you've just all wasted your time. So another thing as well, please never, ever, ever use the word final. Because
it jinxes it.
It does jinx it. It does. I've had final, actual final, final 2, and it's like a joke in the industry, but it does happen at least a few times a month.
I think generally there's nothing wrong with if you have your title and you have, it's labeled migrate song, mix, version, whatever, and then put a date after it or something like that, like something to just give us an idea of, right, this is the one that was most recent, and therefore...
Well, date works really well because it also allows you to align it to, say, for example, the conversations you were having. So if your email conversations line up to a certain time, because often people won't have time to come back straight away, it might be that they have to wait for everybody to come together, or they have to go back into the studio with the mixing guy. So putting a date on it means that when you do look at it in the folder, because sometimes people will go back as well. That's the other thing. So if you're going back to final, not final 2, it can get very confusing, because at that point you might have also changed some settings. So you might want final 1, but with the EQ settings of final 2, because you decided to make it brighter. So just always put the date. And if you're going to abbreviate stuff, also abbreviate it in the conversations that you have. It goes back to that thing of keeping the consistency of language, because again, I don't know what you're calling the songs. And also another thing people do is they give me the full names of songs, and then they use their abbreviations that they use in band practice and stuff. And then I don't actually know which one they're talking about. So it's just a matter of, when you come to the end of your project, just write it all down. Just make a little notepad file or whatever where you've agreed on everything. And then one person communicate that with the person who's doing the work, the audio engineer or whatever. Because then just we know where we're at. And I know we've said this a few times, but it's really important. And it just means that if there is a problem or there is something that needs to be changed, because it can sometimes be like 6 months down the line. Yeah. It could be that you've come to do a vinyl release. You've got the money to do a vinyl release now. And you need to change it. Well, often you'll need to put it onto two sides and stuff. So you'll have to re-communicate the stuff that you've already communicated. So it really is important getting it right at that stage.
I mean, if it's like you say, if it's like 6 months down the line, as much as I may have loved working on a record, I probably don't remember every bit of terminology that we used for, the drop down bit in the middle or whatever.
Exactly. Times within the track and dates when you made them is the best way to describe it, because we can always load anything into a computer and go straight to that bit.
I mean, it comes back to, again, like sort of good data management is when you come in and change a mix and do a tweak and export your version 2 and version 3 and so on, save the session as that new version as well. Don't assume that you will never go backwards, because if you're just saving over the same file, you just go, well, this is my mix. Yeah. Saving over the same file, you can't go back easily. So if you suddenly decide that version 1 was the perfect one and that the one that you did at 3 a.m. the night before that sounded great at the time maybe isn't the one, then you kind of scupper yourself a little bit.
And don't use decimal points. I've got a couple of clients who do this. I won't shame them on camera. But version 2.1 doesn't mean anything to me.
No, right, okay, yeah.
Which has happened quite
a bit. There's no shame in reaching Mix 11, it means you were creative and you were trying different ideas usually.
Don't worry about it. I think that's why people put the final in, isn't it? Because they're trying to trick themselves into not doing any more. Yeah. But it generally just jinxes the project. Yeah, totally. The last thing probably we need to talk about is all of the stuff which isn't audio, which you need to provide. So what is metadata? Metadata is everything which isn't the audio, which comes along with the audio file. Yeah, it can be confusing because metadata can be embedded into audio files. Yep. But and in the mastering stage, that's generally where we embed the final metadata. And that can be on a CD or a digital file. You can put metadata inside WAV files and AF files now. You didn't used to be able to. We have been able to for the last 10 years or so. And you need to have that ready when you finish the masters. So it needs to be ready basically while you're sort of doing the final listening through and you've got a brighter version and a less bright version, and you're definitely confirming the track listing is right. That's when to prepare the metadata. For CD audio and most digital stuff, the metadata that you're mostly going to use falls into two categories, which is codes and text, CD text, and which then can also become ID3 tags for lossy audio files like MP3s and stuff. So there's quite a few that you can do, and I've put the list of them on my website, but there's a few most important ones which you would expect, which is the artist name, the song artist, which can be different, especially compilations or things where you've got featured people. A classic example of that is like rap albums where there's like a producer and other MCs and all this other stuff, but it's I don't know, Eminem's album. Right, yeah. So Eminem is the artist name. They've got all this other stuff that can happen on there. The album title is one fixed thing. You can only have one for the whole thing. And then beyond that, you've got a couple of other bits of standard metadata, which are the track number, which is the order in which it appears in. And when you load it into the piece of software, it will do them in that order. The other side of metadata, I should say there are some other bits you can add to that, but it gets very confusing. It's mostly applicable to worlds where, say, for example, classical music, where there's an artist, a composer, an arranger, all that sort of stuff. Right, yeah. There are other bits you can do. Like I say, I put it on my website. We'll put a link under there. I've always wanted to do that as well. To a blog post where I explained all those things. The other part of the metadata is codes. Some of these are slightly outdated perhaps now because aggregators can use them but can also try and use other stuff. But there's two main ones. There's one static one, which is for the entire release, which is the barcode, which is also called a UPC EAN, and that's the American name and the European name for a barcode. Basically it's a single identifier for that product. So every time that is sold, it will log that one of those is sold, and that's how in the past you would track sales and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff.
And that'll also count for singles as well.
Yeah,
Any sort of
any unique project.
Yeah, product that is its own thing.
That's what UPC is, unique product code. So it's every time you sell it. So if you do a reissue of it, you need a new UPC. Whereas the ISRC, it should be ISRC codes, but it's a bit like PIN number.
It already includes the word.
It already includes the word code in it, but we usually say ISRC codes. That's a identifier for a composition. A piece of music, as opposed to the version of it. So there is some leeway on this, but generally, if you're putting together a compilation, I've done loads of like sort of greatest hits or reissues stuff where you put other tracks on them. You need to pull that code off the original version and put it in, because it's more to do with who's made the song than the actual song product itself. So if you look at the ISRC codes of, say, for example, a Now compilation, they'll all be completely different. Different countries, perhaps, different, obviously different numbers. They won't be sequential. Whereas if you've got a new product and it's all new stuff and you're putting it out, the codes will generally be, for the UK, there's two things they use, UK and GB, loads of numbers, and then like a number sequential
usually
number.
Like 001, 002.
And sometimes you'll create the codes and then you'll change the order. I've done this a few times where you switch the tracks around, but you've already uploaded and chosen the codes. So you have to be really careful on that. Some programs do this thing where they autofill it. And I've made mistakes before where it's actually like it goes 111, 2, that sort of thing, where they've changed the order. So you also need to actually specify that with the track names. The best way to do this, again, and I've got a form on my website that basically forces you to fill in all that those details in like an Excel file. So you've got the track number, all that stuff, and the actual code.
And just to be clear, like ISRC codes are not they're not mandatory.
No,
they're not something you absolutely need to. So if you're not, they can be very useful and they can help in getting artists paid and all sorts of stuff. But if that as a sort of thing scares you, you don't need it.
No, especially if you're just doing online stuff, because the aggregator that you're using, CD Baby, DistroKid, etc., actually logs that stuff for you and gives you reports on it. So if you are getting paid or you're not getting paid right, you can actually go into their diagnostics and their information and find that. But if you are doing anything physical through a shop, that's really important. And still, most distributors do get copies into HMV and FOP and supermarkets as well. And especially things like physical products sold over generic online shops like Amazon and stuff. So if you are going to do like a genuine run of CDs, which you're going to put out into physical distribution and not just sell them at your gigs and stuff, it's worth doing that, because it just means that, when the 6 months comes up and you're trying to work out how many you've got and then you're trying to put your money together to pay for your next album or whatever, you're going to get that and you're going to get it quicker.
And it's relatively easy to, they are free codes that you can get generated for you. It's not going to cost you money and it doesn't take too much time.
You get them from the PPL. And there's a couple of different websites that do it, but we'll include a link down there. Sorry about that. If anything that we think is useful, what we'll do is we'll put it in there, and any sort of like useful musician and producer and artist aim stuff as opposed to engineer aim stuff. We'll include that at the bottom. And there's a couple of blog bits and bobs that I've been putting together in a similar sort of vein to this, where I'm explaining some of these specifications and terminology and all that sort of stuff in a way that is more suitable for chatting with artists. On that note, I think we've covered everything.
I think that's quite a bit. And absolutely. Well, in terms of, I think that there's hopefully a lot to take from it. And hopefully it's demystified a little bit as well. I mean, things like just sort of saying that there are certain little rules that you can follow, like export your audio in the same format that your session is running at. If in doubt, apply dither, it's not going to kill you. And various things that and to try and talk about things like not thinking about high resolution audio in the wrong way and things like that. So hopefully that's useful.
And general project management that you can set up from the start. So hopefully if you know about all these things that you might need at some point, when you're having that conversation in band practice or in the pub or whatever, when you're trying to put all that stuff together, hopefully we've given you some language to actually have that conversation before it's too late.
Yeah.
You know,
and hopefully you're
stressful.
one of these people that likes admin, and this is quite an exciting part of the process for you. We often demand a spreadsheet of rock from artists that we're working with, because we want to know things like what instruments they need to record on each song and things like that. So
let us deal with that nonsense. Get it written down.
Yeah.
And then let us deal with it.
And then we don't have to keep asking questions.
Yeah. And as a final point, if you have enjoyed the video, you found it useful, or you have any questions, you can contact us. We'll put our emails below, and also information about our businesses. And please comment if there's any other topics that you would like covered. We've got a couple of ideas, but it might be good to get some feedback, because we might be able to contain them into something.
And if there's anything in this that you think we needed to go more in depth on, or anything that you think you didn't quite understand, by all means ask questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.